It's Tuesday, the 29th of March 2016. I am Robin Yellow, and this is Techtasm. Dyson built my car, and with me is James Woodall.
Mr. Yellow. I have to say, since our discussion last week on the Apple announcement, I proudly upgraded my phone to 9.3.
And did it brick?
At home, I can't make phone calls.
Look, I'll tell you, all software is dodgy, James. It's all going to require a bit of work to fix, so give them a couple of weeks. I'm sure it'll all be working.
It works in the office. There's just something about being at home. I don't know.
It's been geofenced.
Yes,
you're a person of interest for a foreign power. That's what's happening.
Yes.
Well, this week, James, you and I are going to be taking a look at this electric car from Dyson. Mm-hmm. Some Chromebook news, some state-sponsored hacking, and Oracle asking for $9.3 billion. Well, let's hope they get it, and if they get some of it, they can give some of it to us, because we'll be judging each one of those stories to determine if they're Techtasms, which by our definition is a blend of tech for technology and tasm for phantasm, something that exists only in a person's mind. So, enough of the intro. Let's get on with the show. Fred Lambert in Electrek this week reported Dyson is reportedly building an electric car after investing in solid-state batteries. Now, Dyson is a British company best known for making vacuum cleaners. In fact, it's so well known for making vacuum cleaners, James, that we no longer reach for a Hoover in our house, we reach for a Dyson. So it's achieved copy shop status. Now they made an investment in solid-state batteries, and last year they acquired a Michigan-based solid-state battery startup, Satke 3, for $90 million, and announced plans to build a $1 billion battery factory to mass-produce the next battery technology generation. Now, what's interesting about Satke 3 is that in 2014 they announced they had produced a solid-state battery cell with 400 watt-hours per kilogram energy density compared to Tesla's Panasonic cells, believed to be the industry leader, at about 240 watt-hours per kilogram. Do you know what a solid-state battery is, James?
No, I'm familiar with solid-state drives. Yeah, okay.
Well,
okay.
Dyson, at the time when they made this acquisition, were talking about integrating this into their cordless vacuum cleaners. But according to documents uncovered by The Guardian, Dyson is seeking help from public money to develop the electric car at its Malmesbury, Wiltshire headquarters. And apparently this $174 million investment from the government will create 500 jobs, mostly in engineering. Now, Dyson have refused to comment or acknowledge that this project exists, but James, Dyson and cars, good combo?
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, hey, the guy's an innovator, so the electric car is certainly a space that still needs innovating. I know a lot of companies are having a good stab, but
at least Apple, of course.
Yes, of course. Apple and Google are working on these things, and Tesla are still a fairly new company as well, and certainly all of BMW and Mercedes and Audi's investments.
Well, Stephen Davis in the comments said that the Dyson car will be all plastic, come to bits as soon as you look at it, require a PhD in engineering in order to put it back together again so that it works, and have a tiny motor that runs at 20,000 RPM and produces only 5 horsepower. Brackets, I can remember the Sinclair C5 with its washing machine motor. I can actually remember the Sinclair C5, which was a tiny little electric, well, I don't know what you would call it, bath. It looked like a bath where you sat very close to the ground in a sort of recumbent position with the steering wheel sort of under your knees. It were more like handlebars that were under your knees, and it had a little washing machine motor in it and would go 10 miles at 10 miles an hour, and they were so dangerous they had to put enormous flags on the back so that lorries didn't completely crumple them and kill their occupants. But would you buy a Dyson electric car?
I will definitely buy an electric car. Whether it's a Dyson, we have here 3 Dyson Hoovers and a Dyson fan as well. So we're certainly in the Dyson club here at the household. But as for a car, I don't.
I tell you what, I do not see why not. I own an electric car, as you know, and it has more in common with my phone in terms of it's got an on and off switch. It's got a SIM card in it, and it's got a touchscreen. It's got as much in common with my mobile phone as it does with an old petrol car. So, I mean, it's all about the in-car experience, isn't it? And
Definitely.
why not? There's a picture actually on this article of James Dyson sitting in a black Mini, which has been cut in half. Two things strike me about it. One, he's far too big to be in a Mini, so let's hope he makes something a bit bigger. And two, he's got a big grin on his face. So
yeah, definitely. I have to say, a slight side bit. I was thinking at the weekend of trading in my Uber wagon for the Golf that you drive around every now and then.
Oh, the throbbing road weapon for the Golf GTE, which is a hybrid electric car. So it's got a petrol motor and it's got about a 9 kilowatt hour electric a battery pack in it, which gives you about 15-20 miles of pure electric drive.
Well, I fill up so often, the guy in the petrol station knows me. I think it's just gone too far. It's gone too far.
Well, think about the poor guy in the petrol station. He's got to earn his money somehow. So you got to call it, James. Is it a Techtasm?
It's a reel. I mean, it's a reel that they're working on it. Whether it'll come out, I don't know.
Okay.
But it makes a lot of sense, and sure, why not?
Okay, it's a reel. I agree.
So, Chrome might replace the PC, according to Marin Estrada in the Boy Genius report, or BGR, and it's known. Supposedly, for a 22-inch ChromeBase all-in-one at $299, the author asks, why does Windows still exist? Of course, I have some fairly heated views on this myself, but Mr. Yellow, your pitch?
Well, I'm a big fan of Chromebooks and Chrome OS generally from Google. In fact, as we're recording this, I'm reading these articles on a Chromebook. It's got great battery life, it's fanless, it's got instant on, it's got a lot of things that you love about, for example, a Apple MacBook. It's got those features, but for a very low price. And I think the point he's making in this article is that at $299, a 22-inch touchscreen all-in-one, that looks quite nice. Why would you buy Windows 10? Well, I suppose there are several things that you can't do on a Chromebook, not least development. You can't run your development environment on a Chromebook. You can't run Skype. We're recording this show on Skype. You definitely can't do that. So there are quite a few things that you cannot do, but it also doesn't slow down terribly when it's updating itself. It's a very, very small threat surface, I think, is the vernacular for viruses, because every time you reboot it, which, by the way, only takes 5 seconds, an entirely new, fresh copy of the OS is installed, signed by the manufacturer. So there's you can't put a virus on it, so it doesn't seem to slow down. You can have multiple accounts. I could go on. It only requires a very small 16 gigabytes of disk space. It doesn't require more than 2 gigabytes of RAM to run. There are endless benefits to it. What you can't do, of course, is game. There's no gaming to be found on that. And I think Windows has become a very competent gaming platform, James.
Absolutely. In fact, a MacBook Pro running Windows is one of the best gaming laptops, which is quite incredible. Apple, for whatever reason, just seem to completely neglect the graphics drivers in their own machines. They're notoriously bad at updating them. I have to say, with that Chrome explanation, Sergey would be proud. I wonder if I could hear another person buying a Chromebook.
I am not. I'll tell you what, though. I'm proud of two things. One, the number of people that I've converted to Chromebooks. I did actually lose one at the weekend. My father-in-law told me that he no longer uses his Chromebook and he's gone back to Windows. But everybody else, I've pretty much made it stick.
Okay.
For all the reasons I just explained. But, I would say if you can get away with it, use one. Mm-hmm. You won't regret it. If you need something which is only on a Mac or a Windows PC, then have a Mac or a Windows PC. But I'll tell you this, and I don't know if you're anything like me, James, but you've got relatives perhaps in more advancing years who come to you as the tech luminary and guru that you are, and ask you for advice on what type of laptop they should get. If you advise them to get a Chromebook, you won't get another support call from them. But as soon as you give them Windows or even a Mac, you're going to get that weekly support call for half an hour. Oh, my printer stopped working. How do I make the volume louder? Those questions just evaporate because it's got a nice handy list by specification. You have to have volume buttons, brightness buttons, full screen buttons, refresh buttons, previous and next buttons. They're in force on every machine. You don't have F1 to F10. You've actually got buttons with things on, which makes sense. And, you know, as I said, I'm proud of the fact that people have stuck with the Chromebooks when I've recommended them. And I've also made 2 people buy electric cars in my road as well.
Okay, well, I have to say, I did think a few weeks ago I was looking at a new laptop for my CEO, who you know very well, and I was thinking of a Chromebook, but I haven't fully committed to
well, you've just shown me that you are available for conversion.
I think you and I will be having this topic for a lot longer time to come. But then my requirements are slightly different, as I need to churn out code like it's going out of fashion.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm sorry to say that I think this is a Techtasm. I'd love to live in a world where Chrome OS replaced Windows, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I do think Windows share will reduce, but let's face it, it just owns the desktop anyway, so it can only really go one way. But I don't think it will take it over. I think the bigger threat to Windows, James, isn't Chrome OS, it's actually Android and iOS on the desktop, but we'll store that for another week.
Absolutely.
Because I want to tell you about this Android Central article. Google's state-sponsored hacking alert has vastly been improved, reports Rich Edmonds. Now, the search giant first kicked off its alert system in 2012, but the message which said that there was state-sponsored hacking, and I'll let James explain what that is in a minute, was just a little notification under the top navigation menu. It has now been replaced with a big red flag with a cross in it, with the words, government-backed attackers may be trying to steal your password. And then there's a paragraph which says, there's a chance this is a false alarm, but we believe government-sponsored attackers may be trying to trick you to get your Google account password. We can't reveal the tip-off because these hackers will adapt. But anyway, it goes on and gives you options to set up two-factor authentication and a security key. Now, what the heck is a state-sponsored attack?
I guess it's, we go back to that Will Smith film, Enemy of the State. It's not paranoia if they're really after you, which is, by the way, is a great film for our listener out there. What I will say, is on the subject of the government-backed attackers. Effectively, your GCHQs and your NSAs of the world. This is, I guess, who they're referring to, and of course, every country has an equivalent of these government agencies whose job it is to, for the public good, understand what naughty people are up to. But of course, Google, it's in their interest to make sure that nobody, government or not, can get into your account without your say-so. So
this protection is just around your Google account, okay? It's not about your Microsoft Windows Live account or any other.
Correct.
Yeah, Apple ID. No, okay, right.
So effectively, it's if Google's servers they detect certain traffic patterns and determine whether or not you are the target of being hacked. I mean, this story, as you mentioned, has been going on since 2012, and they've been working to improve this. I believe there was a story about the Chinese government was trying to get into some Google accounts of a few political dissidents that they weren't too fond of. So I think that's where some of that comes from. How they figure that out, I mean, who knows?
Do you have two-factor authentication enabled, James?
Not on my Google account. I do for some things, but not on my Google account. I suppose I should do, really. There's no reason not to.
I have two-factor authentication enabled and I use one of these USB keys. It's called
YubiKey?
YubiKey, yeah.
Yeah.
So the first time you log into a device which you haven't logged into before, you stick this thing into the USB and tap the metal plate on the top, and it sends some crypto string through. What you're logging into has to be kind of set up to accept it, but it basically means if you don't have the second factor, the little USB stick, you can't get in.
What do you do if you lose it?
Well, if you lose it, then it reverts back to the Google Authenticator app on my phone.
Okay.
If I lose that, I've got my 9 physical backup codes, which I also can key in, which I keep in my Google Drive account, which may be a struggle, actually, now that I think about it. I can't get at them. Oh, no, I'll tell you what I've done. I've set because they give you 9 codes which allow you to log in. What I've done is I've shared those documents with family members, those codes, with trusted family members, my wife. So that in the event that I get hacked or I lose the key or whatever, I can at least get back in by getting one of the codes off her. So ultimately, there is a human in the chain that I trust. Okay.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I definitely should enable it. For the systems that I've used it with, I use the text message SMS shortcode because I know I'm always going to have my phone on or with me, and whether it's this phone or not, my network provider knows who I am. So
provided you've got a signal, I suppose, and you've got battery charge.
Yeah, of course. But that's not having one of those two things is fairly...
I would say, if I were to offer advice or anyone was interested in trying to decide whether it's a good idea, I would say just do it. Don't think about it, just do it. Because
definitely.
It's state-sponsored hacking. You mentioned China. Is a lot of hacking come from China?
Well, supposedly, yes, but they're never going to admit to it. I mean, of course, why would they? Yes, supposedly China has huge agencies out there whose job it is to try and work out what people they don't like are doing. And I know that our GCHQ and NSA and so forth are doing exactly the same thing. So, but going back to Google, it's in their interest to protect you against that, because if ever there's a security hole in software as widely used as this, and in fact today, Apple's in the news today, the FBI have cracked the iPhone, but Apple don't know how they did it.
It'll be a 0-day exploit.
Yes.
This Israeli company have obviously got one which they haven't told Apple about,
Yes.
and have just sold it to the highest bidder, which is fair enough, I suppose. They're in it to make money. It's not their job to tell Apple what the vulnerability is. I do think that generally an ethical hacker should reveal what the hack is. And I suppose after they've unlocked this phone, they're going to have to give the information to Apple. But then Apple didn't give anything to the FBI, so why should they, I suppose?
Yes, well, the FBI has no reason to give it to Apple, but yes.
Okay, well, I'm not sure there's a Techtasm to call on this one, so maybe we should just spin on.
So, in the theme of moving forward, Oracle are sticking their hands out and asking Google for $9.3, wait for it, billion, because they're now claiming, and they have done as well, I mean 6 years ago they did the same thing, that it's unfair how Google use Java. And for our listeners out there, Java is the programming language that third-party developers use to write applications for Android. And in fact, a good portion of the Android operating system, not all of it, some of it's in C, but the majority of Android is written in Java also. And basically Oracle, who own Java, are saying that Google shouldn't be using it because it's their language. I will say that Java is supposed to be fair use, and Google is claiming that, but what do you think?
I think they've completely re-engineered it, haven't they, from the specification. It's not like they took Oracle's code and used it. They took the specification of the Java language, being a good programming language as it is, and put in place a programming environment that supported it syntactically. So to what extent that that's copying, I suppose, of sorts, isn't it? And given that originally Java as a language started under Sun Microsystems before Oracle bought them, and it was an open source language, that was the idea behind it, is that anyone could run it on any platform.
That was the idea. I mean, going back to Android 1, they re-engineered the runtime environment, Dalvik, as it was called, which executed the Java code, and I believe the compiler was Google's as well. So yes, you're right. It was purely the language syntax, and in fact, a lot of the user interface APIs were Android specific as well. So Java has a very famous library called Swing, which Java developers in the olden days would use to create their user interfaces, and Swing was not available to Android developers. You had to use Android's activities and views and those sorts of things. So it does seem a little bit tenuous. What I will say, though, the article, which actually I didn't mention, it was in PC World by James Nicolai, mentions that Google have hired their own damage assessment consultant who claims that the damages are $100 million. So if Google are saying that, how they come up with these numbers is crazy. But if Google are saying that, surely there's a slight admission of guilt.
Yes. I mean, there's an absolute admission of $100 million worth of guilt. That's a hell of a lot of exposure, isn't it, really? I mean, if you're guilty for $1, then it's just a question of how much.
Yes,
and the rest is negotiation. Now, Oracle obviously think that $9.3 billion, which represents 6 months of Alphabet profits, is a decent number for the years of lost earnings which they have suffered. It has the whiff of the copyright wars which went on a few years ago, where large companies like Oracle and Microsoft and Google and Apple amassed patents specifically for the purpose of suing for money. And in fact, Microsoft make more money off Android than they do off Windows Mobile, their own platform, simply because they make about $5 out of every Samsung phone sold, out of every HTC sold, by threatening those companies to sue those companies because they use Android, which they say they maintain, infringes some Microsoft copyrights. It's interesting. I think they all kind of sail close to the wind on this sort of stuff. I don't know how many billion they're going to get, but it's going to have to be, if they've admitted 100 million and Oracle is saying 9.3 billion, well, it's somewhere between the two. So there's going to be a payoff at some point, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And the actual copyright is based on 37 Java APIs. Now, I can tell you as an Android developer, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of APIs. So it's probably something, really silly, like the way you calculate numbers, or, something generic to the language, because the majority of the APIs are Android only. It's just those a couple of I guess agnostic APIs, that aren't really useful. But hey, maybe Oracle need the money. Who knows?
Maybe they do.
So I guess, is there a question in this? I mean,
it's a real thing.
It's definitely a real thing, and
I think that Oracle are, they are dreaming if they think they're going to get 9 billion out of this, and part of that is just keeping their name in the limelight, I think, because they're a fading company as far as I'm concerned. Who cares what Oracle do? The value of their database is reducing. It's all in legacy systems. It's a bit like slipper manufacturers. There'll always be a market, but it'll always be a market of a certain demographic, and it's the same way I feel about their database products, that they're for a previous generation.
Agreed.
That's it for this week. We overran a little bit, but I hope you forgive us those extra few minutes. You can find us at facebook.com/Techtasm. Subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher or Feedburner, and you can contact us at feedback@techtasm.com. And remember, if you're on iTunes, we want your stars. We record every Tuesday at 2100 BST GMT, so watch out for next week's episode. This is me, Robin Yellow.
And me, James Woodall.
Asking the question, is it real or is it just a Techtasm?